Hello, this is Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. One of the things that your chamber does every day is that we collaborate at the local, state, and national level with other organizations, with other individuals that are doing important work that connect directly to business, to the economy, and a strong workforce. Today, I have the pleasure of visiting with Glenn Hammer, and he is the president and CEO of the Texas Association of Business. He, the team, their board, do a phenomenal job of making sure that Texans continue to do well, that our economy remains strong. Having said that, many opportunities and also, of course, many challenges. So he's going to give us an update and talk to us a little bit more about what he's seen across Texas and how this state can continue to be prosperous. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us.
Doctor, great to be on the show. And I want to thank you for being an extraordinary leader and a model when it comes to collaboration. You were with us on our trip to Mexico City during the inauguration of President Scheinbaum. And it was fun rolling with you because you're a celebrity. People know who you are and they respect you. And you added a ton to our trip that focused on trade and other important issues for the bilateral relationship.
Well, thank you, Glenn. You know, we have a very small team here at this chamber and an extraordinary board of directors, and one in common, of course, Massey Villarreal, who's been a leader not only in Texas, but across the country. And leaders that you have, such as Massey and others, really make the work that we do something that is a collaboration, but also heavy lifting, right? And so in Texas, especially, we just wrapped up the legislative term. So why don't you tell us and provide us, please, just a quick update of what you have seen from the legislature.
And I have to say, I'm glad you mentioned Massey, who is our chair for 2 years, the Babe Ruth of chamber chairs. He's chaired 4 chambers. We think that's a national world record. Doctor, we feel we had a very successful legislative session, both on offense and defense, if I could say, using that some football terminology. On offense, for the great businesses that you represent, probably the most important thing that happened was the exemption for personal property taxes. Sometimes it's called the inventory tax, was increased from $2,500 to $125,000. For a lot of small businesses, that's going to be a $2,500 tax cut. So that's important. There were a number of other important efforts. This was a big session for infrastructure. But and Houston plays a huge role. By the time we wake up and by the time we go to sleep, Texas will have added another 1,500 people. So what does that need? It means we need more water, we need more energy, we need more roadways, we need more port infrastructure, and the legislature delivered on that. We also know we're in the age of innovation. And I mentioned infrastructure. So we'll be investing more in energy, including advanced nuclear, which is important for the Houston region, particularly as you get some of these big data center deals. But also important is research and development. And one of the key things that this legislature did was it basically permanently extended a research and development tax credit, as well as making it more useful for small businesses and entrepreneurs who may not be paying a franchise tax at this point in time.
So for our region, in your opinion, what is something that we want to make sure that stays on the agenda?
Yeah.
At the state level that will continue to be pressing and important for our region moving toward the next legislative session?
Yeah, you know what? And I'll say, there's also a package that passed that should increase housing affordability for workers. And Houston was often used as a model because Houston has less zoning than pretty much any other city. So when I think of what needs to be on our agenda big time, it's a continued focus on education at all levels. There was a record investment made in the K through 12 system. In fact, $8.5 billion were added to the system to fund teachers, to put additional funds into special education, to do more in literacy. So that was a big deal, and that passed with virtually every member of the legislature supporting it. We're going to continue to make record investments in our great community college system, as well as tightening credentials of value, making sure that the courses offered in our community colleges match the skills that our workforce needs. And also, we're going to continue to see big time investments in higher education in our university system. And some of those efforts will revolve around AI, quantum computing, space, which is a big deal for the Houston region, semiconductors, and other sorts of high-tech initiatives.
So let's talk about tariffs and trade policy.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. So the tariffs are basically set on the federal level. And I'll first start out by saying I know you are, Doctor, and we are strong supporters of what I do think is the best trade deal ever negotiated, the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. The key is we need to keep it and we need to build on it. And what is the guts of that agreement? It's tariff-free trade between the top trading partner of Texas, that's Mexico, and our second top trading partner, that's Canada. And there's a lot of turmoil on tariffs. We want to get our tariffs as close to zero as possible. Certainly in the US, Mexico, Canada region, but also for the rest of the world. Why? Texas, we're number one in everything, as you know, Doctor. We're the number one export state in the country by far. We export more than twice as much as California, for example. But I will put a little bit of an asterisk here. We do support fair trade. The US for decades has had a very, very low tariff rate. We've also had very low barriers. It is time for the rest of the world to also reciprocate. So what we'd love to see is going towards zero tariffs, as well as our trading partners remove unnecessary non-tariff barriers. Like, for example, the EU has all sorts of regulations on intellectual property and technology, and Houston is becoming a tech hotbed. People like saying that the US innovates, the EU regulates. So we're going to need those non-tariff barriers to come down. China is a different story. We need to make sure that the trade with China is more balanced and that our laws, particularly on intellectual property, are being respected, and use a rebalancing so that we can sell more energy goods, more electronics, more stuff that we produce in the state of Texas to China. And I'm optimistic that we will eventually get to that point. But it's like I was on a plane earlier today. It was very, very bumpy. It was very turbulent. It landed. This tariff situation is going to be turbulent for some time. But I do believe that the administration now, with the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, has the right person at the right time to handle a pretty complicated issue.
Well, we need this plane to land and not crash quickly, safely, and for the interest of all parties involved, as we know that this impacts so many different industries. Everything, as you mentioned, from construction to our ports to almost everything you touch in technology, et cetera. So with your
Amen.
the advocacy that you all are doing, and we hope to do collectively when we fly into DC, and we'll bring chamber members and members from across the state of Texas to DC to continue to advocate pro-business and that we have a strong workforce. So before we wrap up, Glenn, I
And
know
our small businesses need that. I mean, on the tariff side, that turbulence, they cannot absorb this, and we don't want to lose small businesses because of this turbulence. So Doctor, you're 100% right.
And so before we wrap up, anything that you'd like to share as it relates to what is next for the Texas Association of Business?
So just getting out of the legislative session, we're going to spend a lot of time in what we call the interim, making sure that all of these different laws that passed are properly implemented. We're going to continue to work hard on trade, tariffs, as you said. We're going to continue to work hard on immigration reform. We're at about the 13th year anniversary for DACA. These are dreamers. we don't want to get to 14 without some sort of congressional action. We do think that a lot of the tax cuts in the 2017 law need to be extended, particularly those that impact small businesses. So we're going to be more active on the federal level in the interim while we make sure that all these laws that were passed in Texas, many of them great laws, are properly implemented. And I just want to thank you for being such a great leader in the state and a great partner of ours.
You. Glenn, thanks for all that you do, your staff, the board of directors, and of course, so much of what we do is dependent on our sponsors. And so we thank our sponsors for investing in these chambers, in the association, so we can continue to advocate to keep business strong and to make sure that we are growing this great state that is Texas. Glenn, my thanks, and I'll see you soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you for having me on the show.